So let's talk about, this is another big question I'm getting. How can I make the same money this year as I did last year? And I'll tell you, it didn't start with this assumption. This started with, gosh, how am I going to make this work? What is this year really going to look like? So one of our doctors I sat down with and laid out a budget. We laid out his original budget that he had built back in November for 2020. And then we built a COVID-19 budget. And as we're going through the numbers and looking at, reduction of expenses and labor versus revenue and collections and going through and building out a true 12-month plan around this, what we found is that you can literally make the same profit you did this year as you did last year. And the secret to that is for the 16 to 20 weeks after this thing opens back up, after business opens back up, for 4 to 5 months, you've got to have a 15 to 20% increase. Now, how do you do a 15 to 20% increase? That might mean you've got to work some hours that you don't normally work. That might mean you've got to pay a little bit of overtime in there to keep your staff on board. Maybe you need to get into some big cases, some larger elective cases. When this thing comes back online, there's going to be a lot of money that's been pent up in people's pockets that's going to flow into the marketplace. This thing is a vaccine or a hydrochloroquine treatment away from eliminating all the fear, and everybody just looks at this as a little case of the sniffles, right? This budget, and you can have the budget, I've removed the personal information from it, but I've left the numbers in. You can see his real numbers as we went through this budget and said, okay, here we were originally going to make, he had a $1.3 million practice. He was originally going to make about 600. And with the COVID budget, with being closed for 6 to 8 weeks, this is what we're looking at for revenue. This is what we have to produce in the months after we open. And now we can almost get to 600K with some adjustments to the other areas. Understanding your budgets is critical. Most dentists that I talk to when they first start working with us, they don't have a budget. They know, some of them know the numbers they did last year. Most of them do not. I won't say most, a lot of dentists I talk to when they first come into Smartbox, they know they did $1.5 million last year. And that's about the highest level number that they know. The 5 A's are critical to driving this budget. And I'm going to give you a workbook here in a couple slides that will allow you to drive into the 5 A's in your practice. Looks like we got a couple chats. June 30th, the deadline. I have to rehire my staff to qualify. Yeah, you have to rehire your staff by June 30. I just applied for the 10K grant. Do I have to withdraw? If so, how? Go ahead and apply for the PPP. You can worry about withdrawing once this thing gets down the road. You don't have to worry about that until you get down the road to the point of originating one of those loans and signing the final paperwork. Yes, and to Amanda's point, I don't believe that you can do EADL first and then PPP, and the PPP will offset the EADL. It'll consume it, for lack of a better word. But once you do the PPP, you can't go backwards and get the EADL, is my understanding. So looking at the 5 A's, the 5 A's are this: answer, appoint, attend, accept, and average. The 5 things in your practice, if you can increase each of those stages 10%, you'll double the revenue in your practice. If you currently are answering 70% of your phone calls and you get to 80%, if you're currently appointing 60% of the new patients, and we can implement strategies to get that to 70%. If you have 80% of your patients showing up to their appointments, attending, and we get that to 90%, right? And then case acceptance and average, 10% bumps, you will double the revenue. You will double the collections. That is the simplicity and the power of the 5 A's. And we're going to give you a workbook so that you can do this in your own practice. If you're a Smartbox current client, or if you're a future client, this workbook will help you to better understand your numbers. Historically, this workbook has only been available if you are in our Success Academy. Now we're making it available to every one of our clients, regardless of if you have Success Academy or not.